So for our one thing, what I wanted to cover here was about having a listing plan. So I titled this the perfect listing plan. And here's the beauty of it. If you have at least a plan, you're ahead of 50% of your peers. That's how simple it is. That's how that I don't want to use easy, but the word easy, but in reality, if you have at least have a plan, you're at least ahead of 50% of your peers. Now we'll talk about what that plan looks like. You might call it a roadmap. You might call it a checklist. You might, for me, what I call it when I go into my appointments is the listing rocket ship. I don't know how I came up with that, but I came up with that 5 years ago. So I just kept it, where I have everything detailed out what's going to happen. So as to set, we were talking about this a couple of seconds ago, Cindy, Tony, and I, before everyone hopped on, about setting the appropriate expectations for our sellers, especially now, because they remember what was happening 3 months ago, where their friends, their family, their coworkers, their neighbors, they were selling, and in 24 hours, they got above asking and 30 different offers. Well, that's not the reality today. The reality today in most markets is there's a few more days on market. But anyway, so going back to the perfect listing plan, how we're going to convert more listings and convert more appointments into actual signed listing agreements is by presenting a plan. And it doesn't matter what it happens to be for you, but presenting a plan that sets appropriate expectations for our homeowners. We're going to go to market and it's going to look like this. We can expect to be on the market for this amount of time. Historically, this is what is being told to us, or this is what we're seeing. If we do not see movement in your listing within the first 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, whatever you want to use, we're committing to do X, Y, and Z. Right? So here what we're doing is we're presenting this information. You being the real estate professional, you're in charge of guiding the conversation, in charge of guiding the transaction. That's what you're being hired for. So by you presenting what's going to happen, the homeowner really has no choice but to use you. The homeowner really is, at this point, they're along for the ride. It just so happens that the house is what's being used in this particular metaphor of the ride. Right? So the key thing here is having a plan. Now, I'll feel free to unmute yourselves. Feel free to raise your hand, or comment down in the chat. How many of us are doing that right now? How many of us are detailing either a timeline, detailing an expectation that goes beyond a simple, we're going to list it and then we're going to hope something happens? Anyone have something that they've written down? I'm working on one. Okay. I like that. Tony?
Do you mean like giving people a timeline of we're going to list
a timeline, a roadmap, expectations, a bit of education on what's about to happen?
Sure. Yeah, I've always given details about, I do a net sheet for them way ahead of time as to projected sales. What we're going to be at this price, at this price, at this price. Here's what you're going to net. It's going to take in our, and I send them market stats as far as the list to sale ratio and the days on market. But right now I'm telling them, because of interest rates, buyers are more skittish and it's taken longer. And I tell them it's usually 30 to 45 days from the time we get under contract to the time we close. This is what's going to happen. We're going to have inspection, appraisal. This is what title is going to need. So I kind of explain to them the whole process from beginning to end when I do a listing presentation, so they kind of know what's going to happen. We don't just stick a sign in your yard and hope it's going to close.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So as you're going through, and then we can open it up to the group in terms of addressing any challenges that you have in your business for listings or sellers at the moment, as you're going through we'll call it the listing presentation because that's how most of us know it. So once you're going through that listing presentation, or you're detailing the plan of attack of what's going to happen, either presenting the timeline or presenting just the bullet points of what's going to happen, the end of the day, at the end of it, one of the big parts where we stumble is really the dismount. We have a great routine. We are performing stellar. We're killing it. But at the end, we're just failing to hit the dismount, meaning, how do we conclude this? Right. So one of the biggest challenges for us is walking away with the listing agreement executed. If you're one of those people that refuses to leave without it getting executed or not, it really doesn't matter. What's more important here is that you communicate well, Mr. Mrs. Seller, generally what ends up happening is we get started right away. So the quicker you hire me, the quicker that we can get this home sold. Or you go out and look for other real estate agents. Most of the time it has to do with price shopping, but what ends up happening is most of my home sellers end up coming back and we get started with a few weeks delayed. Are you comfortable with waiting, or are you ready to get started now? Now I butchered that a little bit because I'm a little bit rusty on that part. I'm more of a game time player, but essentially what you're doing is you're not giving it an option. If you notice that, it's either we get started today or you delay and then hire me, and we're operating from a few weeks behind. So when I give that delay, though, I bring it back to the reason that they're selling. We operate a few weeks behind, and you can't move to Orlando to be with your kids. We operate a few weeks behind. Your school's about to start. You wanted to get into that new school before X, Y, and Z happened. Right. So if you notice that it's either we get started today or we delay, but you're still working with me. I don't know what it's called, to be honest with you, but there's a false option. There's no option. It's just, I'm the option. It's either getting started today or getting started in a couple of weeks. Does that make sense?